Hi everyone, and welcome to the current state of 5G markets. My name is Peik Schulman. I'm from Capgemini Invent, and I'm going to run through during these 30 to 45 minutes a brief 5G pitch, and please feel free to ask questions and so on. We're going to then in the end try to run through some answers on them. First about myself, so I'm a director in TMT and strategy transformation at Capgemini Invent in Finland. I have a global role, but I do focus a lot on the Nordics and Europe. Capgemini, a large European global company with over 300,000 people. What I want to point out is we have a lot of different brands and different ways of working. So I represent the strategy and transformation in basically management consulting piece in the Invent, under the Invent brand. Then we have the Frog brand, which is innovation and creative design, and the traditional Capgemini around applications, cloud services, and so forth. Then we also have engineering, which is really deep down to the roots of how things work. So we do a lot of R&D outsourced services for large corporations. So really electrical drawings, circuits, about 5G also. We're heavily involved in many R&D projects there. And then we have a society basically around testing, quality assurance, and so on. But I'm not here to talk about the company I work for. I'm actually here to talk about the current state. Today, most of you or everyone already know about 5G, know about the hype. You maybe think about, okay, so what's really new about this? And I'm going to try to answer some of these questions. So first, I'm going to do an intro to 5G, then talk about the big promise around the enterprise play, and then going a little bit into the edge computing, and then wrap up around metaverse and why 5G will play a role there. So these four key topics will be presented today. Okay. So, first of all, what is 5G? So you all know, who already have a modern phone and you have a subscription, you might see the 5G in your phone. But obviously, there's much more than that. So it all started, it's a comms technology, radio access basically, with the supporting core, and it's all about the different generations of communication technologies based on the GSM standard from the previous generations. So 4G, and now we are at 5G. The big promise really is around, and what it delivers is really about the throughput, more speed, better density, low latencies. And what we mean with latency is basically the time it takes from the signal to go through from, let's say, the device or the handset back to the network and back to the handset. High accuracy positioning, reliability, network slicing. You can actually create different types of network more in a virtual way, and then guarantee quality of service, SLAs, and so forth. Then also it's a true mobile edge computing enabler. So part of the whole play here with 5G is the edge computing. I'm going to talk more about that later. And then it's really about the convergent network with different technologies, obviously, to support also whatever legacy is there. If you look at these slides on the lower corner, so basically the previous G's has been, the consumer market driven. So if you think about a carrier, a communication service provider, a CSP, Vodafone's, Elisa's, DNA's, Telia Soneras, basically, most of their business have been around consumers. 80%, 20% has been mainly the rural. Then now with 5G, it's really driven by the industry verticals. And really about technical requirements to basically cut the cord, if you want to say that. Then we also see now coming up around the corner is really 5G is also driven by immersive digital experiences. That's the reason I'm going to talk about metaverse and some other interesting digital experiences. I hope you've all already kind of somehow heard about 5G, and so that it's not a big mystery. But basically, back in September in 2019, this is a screenshot from the Ookla online map that you can find on the web. And you can see within 3 years, a lot has happened. So commercially available sites were only, just below 700 a few years back. And you could see, dots around the world. But if we look at today, it's over 100,000K. So it's a significant development and rollout has happened. So you can imagine the investment that has gone into this rollout. And you also see coverage in developing countries, which is great. So it's not anymore only something that industrialized countries are really in the forefront, but it's becoming global, and this is important for everyone. So you can yourself go and find this Ookla site and browse around if you're interested. You can zoom in and find where these sites are and so forth. Obviously, it's dependent on what the carriers then report in to them. And what I also want to mention that this statistic, what you see here, it does not contain and include private networks, because today we see the public networks basically listed here, and you have the private networks. The private networks is what many of the industries are looking into today and actually deploying. And also the network equipment vendors are providing equipment and building up. That's actually something that is growing really fast right now. So I already talked about the equipment vendors. So this is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Unfortunately, this is from last year. I couldn't find anything more recent. There you see that the leaders are Ericsson, Nokia, and Huawei, and followed up tightly by Samsung, ZTE, and so forth. My hunch today, what I've been tracking the market, it's Nokia and Huawei has definitely caught up on Ericsson, and now Samsung is really also becoming closer to become a leader. So it's really a race here going on. But obviously also the political situation in the world has made certain shifts in the market here, but still more or less the market shares have been unchanged. So that's kind of interesting. Then it's also important to understand that the equipment vendors, that's only one part of the equation. 5G is obviously not only about the radio piece, it's about everything below it. So you also need to have the backhaul, you need to dig in fibers, because otherwise it's not a true 5G. You also need to have everything in place to support the bandwidth when it's not the signal doesn't go over the radio interface. And then also naturally all the devices and equipment and everything there, and chipset vendors from Qualcomm's to the others. So it's definitely an ecosystem play that makes this happen. Okay, so 5G, the enterprise promise. So one thing what we tend to say that it's really a catalyst for digital transformation. So what do I mean with it? Well, here you can see basically the advanced connectivity with 5G and edge, that's really helping the industries find new ways of working. So as we all know, industries are always trying to improve their operations, improving OEE, operational efficiency, reducing workforce OPEX, becoming more sustainable, and so forth. So it's always a race who can be profitable and produce the amount they need to produce. And basically with 5G, one promise is that it will revolutionize everything. Well, there is obviously a big hype in many things, because 5G, yes, it can help in many ways, but it's not always that you should do kind of wireless technology on your shop floor, let's say. You will always be doing wiring also still. That's not going away. So it will be always a mix of kind of comms infrastructure here. And then 5G by itself is nothing, but you will need the edge, basically the compute, the storage. You also will need IoT. You will need to connect to the existing systems. What also is kind of an interesting mix here is the legacy. So you think of large industries, they have a legacy infrastructure. The investment cycles are long, and introducing new technologies, it's not that easy. So basically, brownfield versus greenfield, there's a big difference. Many corporations are looking into, what is our factory of the future, and in those cases, it's easy to then take 5G and new technologies into account. But when you have a brownfield, you have brownfield technologies, and let's say you would need to go and renew your PLC fleet, basically that could cost too much just to then introduce 5G and something else to try to improve OEE. There's not the business case. And then the last comment on this one is that when industries look at 5G, it's easy to go in one country, but then larger corporations, they usually want to roll out something on a global level. They have factories all over the world, operations all over the world, and then 5G gets a bit complicated because there are different frequencies. In some places you can have a private license, but in many cases you need a license through the carriers, the CSPs. You cannot go with a private network, you will have to go with a semi-hybrid model or something. So here is a smart factory example. So really about, connecting people, machines and processes, getting more data out, becoming more efficient. And this is something that is truly happening, the IT-OT convergence. Definitely on a POC, POV context, a lot of these tests are happening. Also factories and enterprises have already decided they will go for it. In some cases also, let's keep in mind, LTE is sufficient, so that's basically based on the 4G technology, and you don't yet need 5G. And many of the technologies, let's say the supporting device families and so on, to actually get the information from your processes and so on, they don't exist yet, or devices are super expensive. So the whole ecosystem is crucial here. But this is really, what they're looking at, to have digital twins, understand processes better, react quicker, be more predictive, and so forth. So it's really about going also towards a more platform-based business, what you're doing as a corporation. And another one where also there's a huge transformation ongoing is basically the public sector. So these are examples from the safety side. So as is today is really about these old Tetra networks, and it's very siloed, and it's very old technologies. But in the future, as you understand, more and more information is there, then you can share information, you can get rid of the silos, you can use more information, more sensors, so you can be more predictive also in these public safety domains. And here you see more hybrid networks popping up in the world, and also a lot of new technologies. However, one important factor to remember on the public sector is obviously that its investment cycles are long, and funding is a little bit different. So if you're thinking about kind of, hey, yeah, I would have a great business idea or a R&D initiative, fine. But the public sector, obviously, it's slow and tedious, and then that needs to be taken into account. But a lot of things are happening here. So the MCX is really mission critical over X with 4G, 5G, and we're going to see new things around the smart cities to then help with traffic flow when there are accidents, and all of these things together then with the police, the fire brigades, and basically the first responders. Then a third segment I want to mention about is really about transformation. So obviously we need to cut the emissions, and transportation, especially over rail, is definitely a growing thing. But there again, it's been based on old technologies, and now with 5G and FRMCS, basically the future railway mobile comm systems is really being rolled out and being developed, and this will provide more optimized ways for the railway operators to operate, shorter intervals. But obviously it will also, in the future, we will see more services on trains. When you go out on the countryside, you actually will hopefully soon have better connectivity on the trains, and you can work better there. The same is actually happening on the airway travel. So we already have Wi-Fi on the planes, but that will also become more and more efficient. So basically the 5G and Edge, it's really about, digitalizing and helping the different verticals with new use cases. So we see smart operations, we see the autonomous vehicles, more, high precision risky processes. You can use robots, they can be connected over wireless, they don't need the wires. You can remove them from the cage is what they tend to say, but let's see how much of that will happen. And then, really about connecting the workers, so empowering people with better comms systems. That's a big thing with AR, VR, but also just with better, basic tools, using the mobile phones, gadget devices to drive so. Safety and security, and then the wireless broadband. So it's different. In all the sectors, they're all driving towards digitalization, and 5G is part of this. I want to mention one more case on the connected workers. So basically, let's take the offshore business by for instance, drilling oil or gas, or putting up wind farms in the sea. So there, to connect the workers and reduce basically the need to travel all the time out there, can be significantly reduced with good comms technology and new devices and ways of working. And this is how you actually create business out of new technology. You find a problem, you solve it with smart ways. However, still we are in early phases. So we did a survey, and basically out of those 1,000 enterprises and was it around maybe 60, 70 CSPs, and 30% of industrial organizations have launched the 5G initiatives, and they are piloting, doing rollouts, but it's really pilots, small scale proof of concepts. There are for sure certain industries that have decided on already doing larger rollouts, but it takes time. And then 40% of industrial organizations, they plan to implement 5G at a scale. And within 2 years, we're going to see more. But then looking at the right-hand side, what are the obstacles? And what I already mentioned is really the brownfield thing. You have to integrate 5G with legacy systems and networks. And then also industries are used to buy COTS products off the shelf, basically having Wi-Fi and wired solutions from an IT perspective. And now this is kind of a telco grade story coming in, and this is new. You don't really yet buy them as COTS products, commercial off the shelf, and that's also a big difference. Then it's really about lack of access of the 5G and Edge, basically the application ecosystem. So the good applications to provide the value. So again, 5G as itself, it doesn't do anything. You need to have the applications, you need to have the processes in place to get the business value. Cybersecurity, that's probably a non-given thing that everyone would guess, but that's a big concern for everyone. And so if you're thinking about, what else should I study? Cybersecurity is always good to know, and that's going to be a huge growing business, probably forever. And then about, really cloud environment, data management. So it's all about data, and then adapting business operations with new use cases. So that's also part of the transformation I'm doing. So what does it mean bringing in new technology? How should I transform my operations? What should my processes look like? All of these things. There are big dilemmas for many corporations. So the only thing that is constant is really transformation, and it's getting just faster and faster. Then about, obviously, the business case, defining and estimating the return on investments, and then the final one is shortage of skills. And to be honest, I think that the shortage of skills is really growing, and that's just a fact. So that was a little bit about the current state where we are today. So 5G is out there, consumers have it, over 80 countries in the world. There's over 100K sites with 5G available. There are devices available. Carriers are shifting over more and more plans over to 5G. But also the industries have started to catch up, and they are really looking into the promise of 5G. But there's a long way ahead still, and a great opportunity for everyone. So that's always important to keep in mind. Now, we mentioned a little bit about edge computing, and that's one key element of 5G, and I want to touch about that. This is now part of, this is the Nokia, from Nokia's website. Nokia is part of this Veturi program. So this is basically coming from the EU, the recovery fund, basically out of COVID. And then in Finland, Business Finland is managing the funds and then distributing it through these Veturi business programs. Nokia is driving one of them here, and this is about the intelligent edge. And basically what they're doing, they are R&D initiatives, and this is around edge computing. And I'm not going to read out these things loud, I'm going to explain a little bit more later on. But basically edge computing and edge intelligence, they are really considered essential elements in 5G networks. So it's really bringing the compute power to the edge. And there's a lot of things happening here now. Obviously from a network vendor perspective, it's even more important for them to accelerate this, because naturally they also want to sell more technology, but they also want to get more out of it and help the carriers who have the networks to actually get something out of it. And these are very interesting initiatives, and we're going to see probably very, very interesting things coming out of them. Will all of them be then commercialized? That's a good question. But that's something that I'm obviously also working on. How can you get money out of new investments? Who will actually buy it? What does it mean? And so forth. But now to the point. So what are kind of edge computing use case drivers? So back in the history, what's been going on with the previous Gs is that, carriers consolidated data centers and so on, and then everything went to the cloud. So in someone else's computer, basically data centers. And now suddenly 5G came, and now they needed to start again to think about, so now we need to deploy edge again, so get those more localized data centers. And why is that? Well, the reason is that there are certain use cases, both for consumer, the enterprise, and the public sector, where you need both storage and compute. So basically computer power near the edge. Because obviously the radio interface in 5G is fast, but if you need to travel with the data all the way to the cloud and back, wherever the data center is, that's a long way. And you can be more efficient by doing certain things on the edge. On the y-axis, you see the device edge. Really, on the device side, certain cases need device edge. Basically, the device itself will manage the storage and the compute, or the compute especially. Then we have a far edge, near edge, core edge, and public cloud, basically. And then on the x-axis, you have the compute and the storage, basically there. And when you look at the different kind of use cases, some examples, so the mission-critical enterprise apps, they would need device edge, so something close to the PLC. Then if we think about immersive experiences, you need both storage, but you also need compute to be able to empower them. Gaming is another one where compute is really important. I'm going to have some examples on that. Video analytics, IoT apps. So here is kind of, in a nutshell, the reason for why edge is so critical. And as you see there in the blue text, less than 10% of business data is created and processed at the edge of the network. But that will rise to 75% by 2025. That's pretty big. And that's driven by new use cases, new demands, now when really 5G has been picking up. First, a little bit about the consumer side and kind of an immersive experiences. These are our snap maps from, I took them maybe on Sunday when I prepared this. Just what I want to highlight here is really about, people are doing a lot. There's a lot of activity ongoing. People are uploading videos. There are events. You can see the stadiums here in the US and also in Europe and Middle East and so forth, happenings. And where there's happening, the mobile phone is always there, and it's always becoming more crucial. People are using content, sharing content, and this is really where more and more edge opportunities will be. You go to a sporting event, you want to have kind of overlay experiences. You want to be able to use your device, point it at the field. Maybe you get some information, real-time statistics from your, the sportsman or woman you're following, and also at the same time, the stadium itself and the the ones, providing commercials, they want to do overlay of interesting content for you. And now we're getting into an interesting game that it becomes immersive and real time and context aware, and then the edge is really critical here. So just think about this. This is only the start, but look at the younger people, how everything is around the content, the phone, the uploads, the videos, the moving pictures, and this is the reason why the edge will become crucial. There's going to be very, very interesting cases. Another example here is really about the gaming, and this I think should be watched even more closely. There is not that much out of this in the net yet, but basically, if you look at the top most played game in May, I took this yesterday from Statista. So these are concurrent users. You see the Counter-Strike is really played by over 500,000 people, and concurrent players. Not much by the end of the day, but you all know that these games, they require gaming PCs. You need to have compute power a lot. But just think about this, what the market will look like when mobile gets more mobile edge support, and the games will become truly mobile. Naturally, one thing is the experience on the display, but there will be new games that will require a lot of compute power on the edge, and then basically the screens getting bigger, and the games more intuitive, and maybe also AR in the future through normal glasses and so on. And this is definitely something that is going to grow the edge requirement. This is maybe more my kind of own assumptions at this point, but let's see within 2-3 years if I was correct. So that was about the gaming, about social content experiences and so on, and then about that R&D Veturi program as well from the recovery fund, what's going on here. So there is a lot of investments going into really helping create new use cases, new businesses around these key technologies from 5G and edge computing. So whatever you're looking for a job, you're trying to think of new ideas, this is the time. Just go and check these programs. Think about yourself, what you do. You probably know much more about gaming than I do. And be creative and think about the future, what the future will look like. Because right now, this comms technology is really exciting. So then the metaverse. Well, this is again a huge buzzword, but we all know that when big companies also jump on things, there are some truth to this. There are some interesting pieces and bits that will come together and will become a big thing. Basically it's, we've seen the web, we've seen all of these things. So this is just the next step. Maybe the metaverse is just a fancy, branding name of this, but let's try to think what kind of it could deliver. So there you see the text that the metaverse is a container of public and private decentralized 3D virtual spaces aiming to deliver combined online digital customer experiences and employee experiences with real life feelings. So why also employee experience? Yes, because it's not always about kind of a social media, about these things. It's also about the industrial play. It's about how we work, how we collaborate. And here basically COVID really rocketed us into the life of Zooms and Teams meetings and so on, and suddenly we are so customized to it that it feels really normal. We don't have to leave the home, and this will become even better, these experiences. So imagine working in metaverse in your virtual office and so on. That's just how it will be. It will be naturally supported by NFTs, the currency tokens, the DOAs, the DeFis and so on. Some of them, yes, might be there. Some of them might still be, less used in the future. There will be new things also coming up here. But today's metaverse, so it's really about, isolated and poorly connected immersive experiences. And also, my own point of view is like these AR, VR glasses, like huge things. Yes, they're getting smaller and smaller. Still, you're getting, some people get really easy cars, if you feel, motion sickness. they are heavy, you can't work for the whole day with it. We will see new devices, we will see new ways of working. Maybe Google's glasses will actually have a second coming, I'm sure about that, kind of all the likes. Then many investments, they're few, and they're for specific use cases. Then there's a strong pull for marketing use cases. Naturally, there's a buzz request, there's always a buzz with new technology. Then poor UX, it should say UX, poor user experience and really expensive devices and equipment. That's one challenge, obviously, for this as well. And then it's mostly centralized infrastructures and closed approaches. But that's quite natural. When you start to do something, you need to do an MVP, you need to start somewhere. But the target metaverse, it's really about to have a complete interoperability between the experiences and the ecosystems. So really transfers of the values and the ownership between the ecosystems, maybe through NFTs. And then really about lower barrier to entry with affordable AR, VR devices and such. That's definitely critical. And for sure now the chip shortage has also caused some issues here in accelerating certain things. And then really a global decentralized approach of infrastructure and governances. On the later one, on the governances, let's see. The whole financial world today is all about compliancy, and it's very regulated. So this is nothing that will happen overnight. And there always will be some compliancy and regulations will exist there. Otherwise, things would collapse in one day. That's how it is. And then the digital currency exchange, should everything happen in that world. So getting more into this. And I personally don't think it's difficult to kind of think how this will be. So interesting things happening, really interesting things. But why do I talk about this? How does it relate to 5G? Well, now if you look at the outer circle on this slide, so it's really about the immersive experiences. They drive new opportunities, and 5G, communication and connectivity is crucial, and people are always mobile and walk around, so connectivity is a must. That's the reason why 5G is there. We also have then the edge computing, the cloud computing. That's another play there. So basically 5G will have a big kind of play a role here in helping to enable new experiences such as this metaverse. In the middle, you see basically what kind of activity is hosted in metaverse. The thinking is really about the social experiences, media and education, so very interesting again here. And then basic media experience with gaming, shows and so on, and then economic experiences and how you do shopping and all of these things. And then really empowered by the social one, which probably today is the most strongest one, the social experience. And then empowered really by IoT, more devices, AI, and improved immersive hardware. Then naturally cybersecurity will be a key here again, so that when we go to work, suddenly work won't be gone in one day. So that's the key. This is more or less all I wanted to say about the current state. I want you to think about basically now when 5G truly has picked up, what could it mean with all of these new opportunities out there? Really the industry 4.0, what's going on, all the different industry verticals, what's happening there, what kind of R&D programs they have. Then also thinking about what does edge and mobile edge computing mean, and what kind of new use cases from a consumer perspective, also from other use cases. What could it really become? What can it bring us? How can I help that? What are these cases? And then also new kind of these metaverse stories. What does it mean? And then you see that 5G, yes, it has a role. There's always a hype, but right now I believe and I see that the hype is really in 5G is less hype anymore. It's really the truth. So find information, catch up on this, and jump on the bandwagon and learn more. That's how I'd like to encourage you all. Thank you. questions? So, some questions. How the 5G transformation going to be affected by current near future state of markets? Good question. Now let's first take, for instance, the chip shortage. Definitely it's slowing things down, but now at least some indications is that now it's ramping up again. But let's see, definitely it will. There will be hiccups, there will be delays in getting devices, definitely more expensive devices, yes, with more powers and more chipsets. So it's a big problem. That's one. Then the political situation in the world, definitely. But at the same time, it forces people to invent new things. And that's why I'm taking this example of the green transition and becoming more sustainable. This new way of communicating will be a key here. And this is now driven by this a lot of different programs on green transitioning. This will then accelerate things, and the COVID has also helped us accelerate us into a new way of working. So really what's happening, we have the political things, we have the environmental things, and then shortages of technology. So it will impact things, but both negatively and positively. So there is no definite answer, but definitely all of these things are important. Second question, what are the opportunities in the equipment vendors market enabling 5G? For instance, beamforming, antennas, network equipment, and so on. Obviously it's huge. So for those vendors right now, they are really testing and rolling out, the new release of 5G will be there, the millimeter waves, the use cases will be shortly coming up and so on. So this will be important. Within the next 3-4 years, they will just sell more and more equipment, and they will need more workforce. There will be new use cases required and so forth. At the same time, I'd like to touch on this, is that there is an initiative going on called Open RAN. So that's coming from the carriers, that they want to kind of have less proprietary solutions and have more open interfaces, and being able to get their equipment from different kind of vendors and not be in more vendor lockings and forced by the standards coming from 3GPP and so on that the vendors are following. So Open RAN is definitely going to drive down prices for equipment vendors, for the established ones and here ones, and that's also important at the same time, because that will help to accelerate things. But then there's also a question that how well will the Open RAN work in the early infancies? For sure there's going to be hiccups, for sure probably it's going to be more power consuming on the energy side, but then for sure it will come together. So yes, because of the Open RAN, you will see new players also. There are already new players, and also the big, the Amazons, Microsofts, and so on. They are all looking into how could they package already hardware somehow and comes into their offerings of cloud with Azure, with AWS, and so on. So, but many of them obviously then do white labeling, buying from established vendors. But the market is shifting and changing. Yes. Then the third question, does edge mean integrating a processor and storage to a device? So really the device edge, if you saw on that slide, that's where you integrate it all the way. Let's say the PLC controlling something on the factory. There you would have both the storage and the processor really there, because it needs to control the process in real time, and it also needs to control it without transferring critical data all the way somewhere to a cloud and back. And it needs to function all the time, 24/7 with 5 nines. So practically, yes, your question is right. Your view on metaverse for the recruitment process. So I guess you're asking, how would a recruitment be in metaverse? That's a good question. But I could imagine that it's more interesting than a Teams interview that you do for a person. You could actually then do more immersive tests. So I'm very used to management consulting. You know, there's always these case studies, and do you manage to crack the case, and how well are you? So these could be fairly interesting to test an employee when you do recruitment over metaverse. So it would not only be your one-to-one conversation, but it could be the conversation at the same time you will ask them to fix the Rubik's Cube. Well, that was a bad example, or actually crack the case of quickly calculating the market size of something and explain it more virtually. And then you really would see how a person functions by communicating, but also presenting at the same time, and so on. Then naturally one could think about metaverse, then you would have all the information there, you could see private lives and so on. So also that's a domain that needs to be followed carefully. So what about the privacy? What about the data? What can you share? What can you do? And we are learning by doing, but interesting things. I don't have an answer really, but yes, I think recruitment processes in metaverse will be interesting, and people will in the future work anywhere in the world. It's going to be less and less and less dependent on where you actually live in the country. So, good questions. I'd love to hear more, and don't hesitate to kind of drop more questions if you have any. But I think our time is up. So I'd like to thank you, and you're all smart people. Study yourself, think about challenge questions, and try to figure out what is hype and what is the truth. And you guys, you are the future. I'm already an old guy, so you understand many things much better. So I'm really looking forward for that you will create the future you want. Thank you.